Hello everyone and welcome back to another video where today I'm going to be giving my initial thoughts and review of Doctor Who Season 2 Episode 7 Wish World. I may be a slight bit biased for this one for reasons that will become clear if you saw the earlier video, but obviously yeah, I'm in this one exceedingly briefly. I'm only there for like a second, but I do make a cameo appearance in Wish World. But if you want to hear more about that, go and check out the video before this. For now, we're just going to be talking about the episode at hand, Wish World. But honestly, I did really enjoy this one, even with that kind of moment aside. Also subscribe if you're new, that would be greatly appreciated. We're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers and we're currently at 27,200. Any support will be greatly appreciated. We're going to try and make it for the finale. I don't know whether we can do it, but that's the goal. Let's see if we can do it. So the premise is, as we've kind of spoken about before, the world is not as it seems. The Doctor is not the Doctor, he's John Smith. He's married to Belinda with Poppy as his child. Conrad seems to be running the world. There are these things called the Bone Beast that the Rani is all, held up in alongside Conrad and stuff. And basically, it gets revealed at the start of the episode that the Rani kidnapped a baby who then basically makes wishes and thoughts manifest, essentially. And she names it Desiderium, which I did look up whether that was a god. I don't think it is, but it's the Latin word for desire, so I assume that's why they named it that, because it is a god that literally grants your desires. And basically the way that Conrad controls the world is that he gives his wishes to the baby, and then the baby manifests them into reality. So that's one of the members of the Pantheon, which was a very cool twist and a very cool little detail. Something I love about this episode is like how 1984 it is. There's this whole sort of running thing about doubt and doubting things, and that basically being seen as like the worst thing you could do. And obviously there's a lot of commentary on this obviously being Conrad's ideal society. The Doctor flirts a bit with Colonel Ibrahim, and Colonel Ibrahim's like, what, you can't do that. How can a man find another man beautiful? Like, that's not how that works. And obviously, with the whole dispossessed part of it as well. Obviously, disabled people kind of just get forgotten because Conrad doesn't think about them very much, which again ties in very well with what we see in Lucky Day as well, as I've said before. So all of that stuff was very, very good. And I liked, obviously, Belinda figuring out that Poppy wasn't actually her kid. She just goes out to scream in the woods. It was very 1984 and also like a little bit like I kind of got Truman Show-ish vibes. I love the 1950s aesthetic of it. Visually, again, I think this episode's fantastic. There are a couple of shots, in fairness, where I was like, ooh, particularly when the Rani's on that, Green Goblin glider thing, I thought, ooh, couple of bits there. Obviously, we see in this one, obviously, Mrs. Flood as well, who's kind of the subservient Rani, as established in last week's. It's obvious, though, that she is getting a bit sick of being second in command, so I get the feeling that that tension's going to boil over at the end. Obviously, in the Bone Beast kind of ship area, we get a giant seal of Rassilon as well, which was very cool to see. When was the last time we saw a seal of Rassilon? Was it the Timeless Child? I don't know. Probably around then. So that was very cool to see a giant seal of Rassilon. It was like, oh wow, it's the seal of Rassilon. And so yeah, Conrad has basically been using these broadcasts to tell stories of the Doctor, which I thought was very interesting. And they call him Doctor Who, and they're reading from a book called Doctor Who. And the Doctor is very resistant to the idea that this world is wrong. Obviously, we see him interacting with Mel Bush, who in this reality is his neighbour. But Ruby Sunday is kind of the one to try and snap him out of it. She sort of knows something is wrong. She doesn't fully know, because it takes her a while to kind of register that, you're Shirley or you're the Doctor and stuff. But she knows something. And so, obviously, she's the one trying to break the Doctor out of it, but the Doctor is not having any of it. And we get these really haunting scenes where someone expresses doubt, and then basically they're carted away. This happens to the Doctor when Belinda calls him up after he notices the tables don't do that. Obviously, the whole thing with the tables is they kind of don't properly, function. The tables aren't solid, the cups fall through them, and that's why everyone has, spare cups, which I assume is a consequence of the god not being able to maintain solid matter in this world all the time, which explains why the cups fall through the tables and stuff. I thought all that was really good. I thought the world building of this one was really, really cool, and I really liked the visuals and kind of the aesthetic of it, and the whole idea of it I thought was fantastic. It was fun seeing the Doctor use his name John Smith, and obviously Ncuti playing a, confused, just regular man who is not aware of, being the Doctor, but of course he slowly does remember. And eventually, when the Doctor does get kidnapped alongside Belinda, the Rani does reveal all the plans, and eventually it does click into place. I liked the reveal as well that the Vindicator was the thing that basically allowed the kind of clock to function, and basically the way that, like, the universe can collapse is because he's been zipping all across the universe with the Vindicator, which kind of acts as like a net encompassing the universe. I thought that was a really good kind of use of the Vindicator, and that felt very, like, satisfyingly paid off. Speaking of satisfying payoffs, though, I am slightly terrified as to how this episode is going to be paid off for a few reasons. Obviously, I barely mentioned, actually, we get a Rogue cameo on a green screen on a TV where he says, "Tables don't do that," and he's basically warning the Doctor, and it seems like he's still in his weird kind of purgatory that he was left in after the events of Rogue when he detonates that thing. I assume they couldn't get, like, Jonathan Groff on location because he's, like, too busy and expensive, so he's just on a green screen, which, it's fine, it works, but it was funny. I did notice it. But eventually the Rani reveals her plan where basically the idea is she uses the Doctor's memories to kind of overload this universe and cause it to destroy itself, because if people doubt too much, then this world collapses. So if a Time Lord doubts, that doubt is accelerated, essentially. And she wants this world to collapse specifically because she wants to wake something in the Underverse, and that thing in the Underverse is, of course, Omega. They finally did it. They brought Omega back after all these years. And I think this is the thing that I'm slightly worried about, because I think up to now, this story already had quite a bit of stuff going on in it. You've got all the stuff with, like, the Wish World Society, and you've got Comrade there, and you've got the two Ranis there, and you've got Desiderium there. I already feel like there's enough there to already justify a finale. And don't get me wrong, I was hyped as all hell to see Omega at the end. Don't get me wrong. Or at least to hear him and then see, Omega flash up on Comrade's screen and stuff. Very cool to finally see that. But there's a part of me that worries about it being similar to Empire of Death, where Sutekh isn't really, like, paid off very well or utilised very well, because there's more of a story going on around him, if that makes sense. I mean, in Empire of Death's case, I will say the difference between this and Legend of Ruby Sunday, I definitely prefer this. Legend of Ruby Sunday, if you go back and watch it, is pretty empty. Not a lot really happens in it. This one, I can't say that. I can't say that for it. It is very much, there's a lot going on. I want to give a special shout out to the actress who plays the Rani, Archie Punjabi. I think she's fantastic. She's probably one of my favourite, like, new Time Lord castings we've had. And I also like the moments where Anita Dobson also goes a bit sinister, because obviously we've only really seen her be quite the innocent and more feckless of the two. So there's that bit where she is taking Belinda and the Doctor away, where she's like, "Oh, but doubt's the best part," and all of this. It's quite sinister. I like that a lot. The other thing that I'm slightly worried and nervous about is the whole thing where the Rani is like, "Oh, we used to be friends," and stuff like that. And do you remember what we used to get up to? And I feel like we're going to probably delve into some, relationship they had pre-Hartnell, and obviously Omega is going to be key to unlocking that and making him remember that, which I'm not hugely keen on. I mean, obviously, as I've said before, not hugely keen on the pre-Hartnell Doctor stuff, and I worry about them sort of fiddling about with Gallifrey's lore too much more. I already feel like that's kind of been, fiddled about with plenty in the last couple of years. I'm also really nervous to see Sutekh's design, because I've heard rumours, and I just really hope they don't do what they did with Sutekh, where they just completely overhaul the design for no reason. Like, I get it, the 70s helmet is a little bit goofy looking, but I still would prefer that over, like, a dog or, something else like that. Hopefully we at least see the mask even vaguely. And I don't mean the Arc of Infinity mask. I mean the proper, sort of cone head mask. Even if it's, like, in the form of, as I said before, one of the ways I wish they'd have done Sutekh would have been to do, like, the mask, but it's kind of, like, raised up. So it's kind of like a Wizard of Oz type scenario where you have, like, sort of smoke around it and stuff like that. I think that would have worked really well. But I digress. I hope that Omega's design is good. That is something I do hope. The voice did sound very similar to the Three Doctors Omega. I don't know whether it's the same voice actor. I don't know whether that actor's still with us. You'll have to let me know. I haven't checked that yet. But it did sound very, similar. So if it is a new actor, props to that. And if they got the original actor back, even cooler. But yeah, it definitely did feel like Omega, which was good. But yeah, we also get the line towards the end where the Doctor is being plunged into the Underverse by the Rani. He's like, oh, I have a daughter, do you have any idea what that means? And I'm like, oh no, we're not going to make it so that, like, Poppy is like Susan or something. I don't know, I'm just really worried about that. That's what I mean, that's the thing I'm worried about. Like, and they keep mentioning this secret, and I'm like, I just hope that it doesn't make the characters worse in any way. That's really my only major concern with this, because I do think that this is a pretty major step up from Legendary Sunday that we had last year. Obviously, I hope that the next episode is a step up from Empire Death. We didn't get a preview of next week in this week's episode, which makes sense, to be fair, because it's a two-parter, so that's fine. It does make me incredibly curious to see how it's going to wrap up. Overall, I did very much enjoy this. I liked, obviously, the little nods to Kate and Colonel Ibrahim being a thing. There were a lot of flashbacks in this episode, but it made sense why, because obviously, they're remembering as the audience now, so it didn't feel too egregious to me, but I did notice them quite a few times. I think maybe they could have done with a couple less, but that's really quite a minor criticism. Overall, I think I enjoyed this more than, it might be controversial to say, more than last week. Maybe even Story of the Engine, to be honest. I know everyone raves about that one, and I did enjoy myself, don't get me wrong, but I think this one, it was just really a kind of like a great concept, really fascinating, really well executed. Maybe I just have a slight personal bias because of the reasons I outlined. But I genuinely did have a lot of fun with this. But that doesn't stop me having concerns and like mild criticisms. Like, I'm not a huge idea of delving too much into like Gallifreyan lore again after we've just done that. Especially because, this is supposed to be like a new era. And it just feels weird to sort of make Gallifrey lore such a big part of the show again so soon after we all already sort of did that. Maybe they'll do something with Omega and the Timeless Child. Obviously, if you've read the Virgin New Adventures, Omega is the creator of time travel, and he is one of the 3 founding members of Gallifrey alongside Rassilon and the other of course being the Doctor reincarnated. So maybe they're going to do something with that. Like, maybe they're going to say that, like, Omega was... Maybe Omega was aware of the whole Timeless Child scheme. I don't know. I did like that he was hiding in the Underverse, though. It made sense, because obviously, prior to this, Omega has been in, like, the Antimatter universe, so that made sense for me. It's interesting, though, because the Under-universe in The Giggle was sort of seen as a place where all the gods, lurk. And of course, while Omega is incredibly powerful, he's not necessarily a god in the traditional sense. He's kind of like the leader of the Time Lords and stuff, but I don't really mind them kind of, retconning that or kind of slightly changing that, so he's like the god of time. That's fine as far as I'm concerned. Something else I wanted to point out that was pretty cool as well is that when they're counting down to midnight and they're saying like 9 minutes left, there was like 9 minutes left of the actual episode, I'm pretty sure, so that was a fun little detail. Yeah, I definitely think this one, like with a lot of this series, or like with any Doctor Who episode, will probably like be even better on rewatch. I think there's a lot of little details that like you see the first time, but you probably don't really like pay proper attention to, that I think, probably benefit for the second watch. Obviously, Susan Triad is in unit reprising her role as the tea lady, which again makes sense, given that in this reality, women kind of are, more subservient. There's that scene where Belinda is discovering, that she doesn't remember the birth of her kid, and her gran and her mum are like, well, that's our role, we become, good girls, and then good wives, and then good mothers. Like, that's the role. So it's, kind of playing on, Conrad's whole kind of right-wing grifter man tendencies, which, yeah, I liked that. That was good. I am worried about the finale being overstuffed, though. I won't lie. That is something I'm worried about. Especially given that I assume Kit from the Interstellar Song Contest is making a comeback, because he says as much in the end of the episode, and we also see his guards from that episode. So that's just another thing to add to the list of things that are going to be in this finale. This finale is longer, to be fair. It's going to be about an hour and 6 minutes. And it does need the extra time, but I almost feel like it needs to be at least 90 minutes to kind of properly pay off all that they're setting up here. But we'll see. I think I've covered most of the things. As I said, I really liked how the Rani was characterized. She felt like a very good modern, like, sort of adaptation of the Rani while still feeling very core to the original Kate O'Mara performance. I really liked that. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this one. Obviously, it really is dependent on how the finale wraps things up. If the finale wraps things up badly, I will look back on this one, you know, a lot less favourably than I have now. Same with last year. Obviously, I was quite hyped coming out of Legendary Sunday because Sutak was back. But when you actually sort of go back and rewatch Legendary Sunday with the context of Empire of Death, it doesn't hold up as well. And I'm hoping that's not the case here. I'm hoping that the finale does hold up and does deliver on what it's promising and outlining. I just worry that there's so much going on. You've got the two Ranis, you've got, you know, Comrade, the baby, you've got Poppy, and you've got all these other things, and you've got Omega now being thrown into the mix. And all that stuff. Oh, that's another thing I want to say. The design of the Overseers that are keeping an eye on everyone look absolutely sick. They look awesome, by the way. I thought that was a really cool thing. And she says that, like, it's a bit of alien technology, like a basic Overseer, so I thought that was really cool as well. I liked the kind of implication that Mrs. Flood was kind of acting as a surrogate kind of motherly figure for Conrad in this very weird scenario. It's funny to think that even though, you know, he wants to be in control, he still isn't. Really, you know, the Ranis still have real proper control over everything, and he's just along for the ride. I wonder what's in it, though, for him in terms of, like, the Mayday angle of it. Because I get that, you know, the Rani granted him his own world to have mastery over, which, you know, is a fair thing to trade off. But when Omega comes into the picture and when his world is, you know, destroyed, I wonder what the kind of endgame for Conrad is. Does he think that maybe Omega will be able to do something for him? But to be honest, I don't know what else you would want. You know, he basically has entire control over the universe, or at least over Earth, just like he would want. Oh, I liked the whole thing of real-world objects that we know, or at least I say real-world, Doctor Who, you know, kind of objects that we've seen in the show kind of being relics in this new one, reminders of the world. And obviously I liked the whole thing that when things don't make sense, they're just kind of thrown to the side. I did like the Rani's gag about exposition as well. That was fun. I didn't come just here to exposit. Like, she has an actual reason to exposit stuff to him because it's part of the reason, it's part of the way that she can gain mastery over... It's part of the way that she can break open the universe in order to get to Omega. But that's about all I have to say. I'm probably going to find other things. Overall, I enjoyed myself, but I am cautious going ahead with what they're going to do. It largely is pretty much just a setup episode, but I think as a setup episode, it's much more compelling than last year's. Like, there's just a bit more to chew on than with Legendary Sunday, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. That would be greatly appreciated. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you later.